It's Tom Llewellyn, and this is the governance series. What are the things you do to actually build a government that performs, that's data-driven, that's smart, that's probably a lot less expensive, right? Number 5 is one near and dear to my heart, is how do you simplify our government? Bill McDermott, CEO of SAP, who, full knowledge here, I worked for a decade, right? Said, I don't know, it's 5 or 6 years ago at a CIO council. I think he was in San Francisco. He might have been in Germany, not sure. But said, hey, look, guys, 10% of your companies are eaten up in complexity, right? You get these business processes that are unwieldy, right? Or you're doing things you probably just shouldn't be doing, and it's expensive, right? And when you look at a $20 or $30 billion Fortune 500 company, 10% is a good chunk. When you look at a $5 trillion enterprise, the largest enterprise in the world, it's a gigantic chunk, right? And it's been out of control in terms of what it does, how it spends, objectives that it clearly never meets, ever, it seems like. And the problem goes back to 1936. Most you won't get taught this in college, but 1936, Social Security, which was outside the scope of the responsibilities in the Constitution, just like the income tax had been 20 years ago and needed a constitutional amendment, FDR didn't want to go through that, right? He just wanted to pass it. And it was clearly extra constitutional, right? But the justices at the time decided, well, the Constitution doesn't really mean what you think it does, right? And so, hey, you guys in Congress, instead of those 40 things, or how many ever there are, that you're allowed to spend on, you know what, we're going to blow it up. And you can spend on anything you want. You don't even have to spend it well. Just spend, right? It's one of those pivotal times in history that just, and I hate to say it, we've given a bunch of grown children a checkbook with unlimited funds, and they just spend wildly in complexity. And you can see what it's done. It's not only expanded the footprint of government, we're effectively, $5 trillion is a ton of money. Now we have the complexity added to it. You look at this, the new bill coming through, this says 3.5 trillion. It's more like 5.3 trillion. But a budgetary item to add all kinds of social programs, all kinds of regulation, all kinds of whatever. It's 10,000 pages long, right? It's like nobody's going to read it, right? And worse, because there's so many things in it, it's so complex. None of the things will be individually debated. Not by Congress, not by us. Can you ask us what we think? So we won't really hear about it. There'll be a little debate on TV where the Twitter wars, set off, and it's kind of like a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't make any sense. And it's like, what are you to believe? Don't believe anything from either side, right? But how do you fix this? So, and we've been trying. Congressional Budget Office was a new thing. I think it was out of the 70s, and it basically was, look, when you do things, we're going to try to render what it really costs, right? And they've been okay at that. Most of the time, you get people just, taking snippets out and using it as propaganda instead of looking at it holistically, right? But we need something else. We need to institutionalize simplicity and effectiveness, right? We need to institutionalize kind of entrepreneurial thinking. Hey, these old ways of doing business, we got to change, right? So I propose the chief simplicity, innovation, and analytics officer, right? And so we can, hey, this ain't simple. This isn't the way to do it. Either divide it up or make it much simpler. Obamacare would have failed miserably. I mean, it got at its two mandates, pre-existing conditions and trying to reduce healthcare costs. The pre-existing conditions, you could have done on one page, 30 billion, we're out, right? But the other 20,000 pages was so complex. It didn't fail because it had good intention. It failed because it's vastly too complex, right? So, if we could have been grading along the way, it's like maybe we would have found easier ways and it could have been more successful. Be that as it may, we didn't, because we didn't have a chief simplicity office, a chief innovation officer, or analytics so that we can track on it. it's, you know, it's dark data. You can't see what's really happening, right? So the analytics office would be out there to set up an American dashboard so we can go look at the data. The innovation officer would be a guy that ran, let's call it X Prize kind of competitions to simplify stuff, whether it's current regulation or new laws or new proposals, right? And the simplicity officer is the grader. It's kind of like, is this simple or not? Or is this congressman promoting complexity or not? Is it, you know, those kind of things. So we can see, right? Anyway, just an idea, but man, you know, we got to do something or these guys are going to destroy our nation. Anyway, my name's Tom Llewellyn. I'm civil, and I'll be back next week and we'll talk about more things that we can do to make America better. Thanks.